as Hell Month is just because this month for sure, next month maybe, but this month I have so far maybe 2 hours of personal time. I'm just constantly working, catching up with stuff. I got another podcast launching, another one later in the year I got to prepare for. So just so much stuff going on. But that's why. But I'm good. Everything's awesome. No car accidents, no truck accidents. No, everything is good. Everything is awesome. And now we're now on the mainstream. And to everybody on the mainstream, I want to wish you good morning and an amazing morning, and welcome to the best Saturday morning of your life. At least I hope so. I'm going to do everything I can. And this is the Freedom Coffee live stream for those of you who've been watching us for a while, and I'll get to that in a little second. And we talk about the freedoms that we have fought for, that we've maintained, and we also explore different ideas on how to expand those freedoms in the future. And we all come together around positivity, not the usual negative smear stuff, which we'll talk about after, that comes out of the political swamp. But if you could, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you are in the live chat, because I'm testing a bunch of things, just throw comments in the live chat. I'm actually testing something for the guys at the National Telegraph, a new encoder to see if it integrates properly, and we'll see what happens. Bridget, okay, hey Bridget, what's up? Good morning, Jesse. Oh my God. I'll get to that later on. That's funny, Bridget. It really is. Anyways, so I'm back for a little bit. This is Hell Month, as I was describing, over locals. So, I had time down south where I couldn't really live stream. Lots of things were going on. And this month, I'm having maybe 3-4 hours of personal time. And next month might be the same way, just catching up on a bunch of things, a bunch of projects, putting together things to launch and all that sort of stuff. So I have been derelict in my duties to live stream with you. This month is going to be tricky. I'm going to try to maintain, at least for sure, Saturday mornings, like we're doing right now. And this one we might have to cut a little bit short because I have a radio interview that I have to prepare for, who sent me some questions yesterday. I don't even know what the questions are. So that's one. So things are a little bit busy, catching up with trucking and a whole bunch of other stuff. And if you are on the TNT stream, if you can see it, I got to test it right now actually to make sure. Oh yeah, it's streaming, it's working. Okay, cool. If you are on the TNT stream, if you could just post a comment that you can see things and everything is working. On my end, it looks good. So we're starting off great. So far, my goal of making this the best Saturday morning of our lives, I think maybe we'll get there. I don't know. It's all in the framing, right? So a couple of things have happened. I was going to talk about this last week, but it just the life got ahead of me, and just too many things going on. And that was the Baltimore Bridge that collapsed. I know it's a week ago, and now sometimes when it's a week old, people think of it as history. At least that's what people in the journalism industry do. But I don't. I like history. I like archival information, something that we don't know enough about. And that bridge, Baltimore Bridge, when it collapsed, I happened to be on that bridge. Not when it collapsed. Before it collapsed, I was on a couple of times. Once in the morning, and then on my route back, I was going from Washington to Baltimore to pick up a backhaul and come back to Canada. And it's interesting, when I was there in the morning, sometimes you're in the truck. I have a couple of phones set up and cameras, and you can just press a button and have it take a snapshot. And sometimes, when you're in the truck, you see some of the most beautiful views across the country. It's really a great way to see North America. And you get to see all sorts of little towns. There's all sorts of little structures that regular people don't get to see. Bridget knows. And we've talked about that before. So I happened to be coming up to this bridge, and it was rare in that you would drive up to the bridge. Like usually, like White Plains, New York, you're driving down into a valley to cross the bridge and stuff. This was a rare case where you seem to be on an incline and driving up to this bridge. It just made it seem so much bigger than I guess it was. But I ended up taking a picture of it. And I don't know, is that the last civilian picture of that bridge? Who knows? I don't know. But it was really wild, and that I had left. I had a very, very long delay. I was delayed 8 hours at my pickup. And when I came back, I obviously drove across the bridge, came back, went towards Canada, and I'm in the truck and I get a message over Twitter and somebody sends me something. And then on my feed, I see what was trending, a bridge in Baltimore collapsed. I'm like, okay. And I look and I'm like, wait, that looks familiar. Well, sure enough. So I got a call from Joe Warmington at the Toronto Sun, who saw the tweet. And I had posted that it was not so much a close call. It was only a few hours, right? But I thought, in just a few years, that's now the second event that I think I was somewhat close to, And the previous one was the Danforth shooting that everybody in Canadian politics and Canadian media wants to memory hole. The Danforth shooting was when a jihadi ran up and down Danforth, executing young girls who are out for ice cream with their families. And that's right in my neighborhood. And I was supposed to be there that night. I was supposed to go down and meet somebody for souvlaki, but I was just so busy editing a podcast. I was editing, I think it was the Quicken Report at that point. It was ironically. But I ended up going down there just really quickly to pick something up and then come back, if I remember correctly, and missed it by, 45 minutes. So I said to Joe, that was quite a few hours. The Danforth shooting was a lot closer to home, and still disappointed in Canadians who want to memory hole things that happen right in front of them and pretend that they don't exist. But anyways, you can check out Joe Warmington's article in the Toronto Sun about it. But just kind of weird. Or maybe, as Elon Musk, Scott Adams, and Nick Bostrom tried to say, or trying to indicate, maybe it's just a simulation, right? Who knows? Maybe it is. Following the comments there while watching on Locals. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Beth. You're amazing. I was just explaining that to my kid. What were you explaining to your kid, Bridget? What about the Danforth shooting? Because, there's lots of that stuff going on. And we're going to get to another one of those stories later on in this. But anyways, it was very interesting that story went out, and Joe Warmington put out this thing, and just did a couple usual radio hits, nothing special, 15 minutes or so. And I did one on Mark Petroni's show, who I listen to frequently. Follow Mark on Twitter at Mark Petroni. And the other one was one of the Toronto news stations, AM 640. What am I saying? That's the one. And it was very funny that the guy who was hosting is pretty good. He understood this first issue, this Danforth shooting type issue, clearly, because they'd been speaking about it prior, not that, but similar adjacent issues. And it was amazing, the ramping up of the fear porn on this whole bridge thing, because you saw it. I'm sure we all saw it. Oh, it's a conspiracy. Oh, it was an attack. Oh, it was this. No, maybe it's just an accident. Maybe accidents just happen, right? And I put an article in my Substack about the diversity hiring practices of the ship, the company that mans that ship or owns the ship. But the pilot works for the port, so the pilot was not part of it. But I don't know who maintains that ship, right? Some of the diversity hires, is that who was maintaining it? Is that why the generator went out? I don't know. Maybe it could just be a freak of nature. These things do happen. And, I had a tire blowout a couple of weeks ago. I do a lot of preventative maintenance in every possible scenario. But, things just happen. And the pilot seemed to do an excellent job, at least the best he could, trying to save the ship and not hit the bridge. And as I mentioned in both my article and to Joe Warmington and on this radio station, that not everybody is Sully Sullenberger landing in the Hudson. But it's very interesting. Listen to the guy on the radio saying, you know, the person before in the previous segment said, this bridge going out in Baltimore, that's going to, you know, disrupt global trade and people are going to be out of work in the ports for 4 or 5 months. And I had to like just help him dial it down, man, and just say, hey, man, the world economy is not going to stop just because a bridge went out. I mean, and it's one of those bypass routes, right? Like many cities in the U.S., like Atlanta, Baltimore, we even tried to do it in Winnipeg here. There's a perimeter highway. This is just the southern end of the perimeter highway. So yeah, okay, there's going to be more traffic for a couple of years. I have to reroute and redo some of the routes in that area of Baltimore. Maybe create some temporary one-way streets or whatever. Who knows? I'll figure it out. That's it. Just relax. Everything's going to be okay, right? Yeah, well, Bridget, if your son has any questions about that, there's a lot more stuff I know on that file. But anyways, what was very interesting is once that story went out, and I put it up, and Joe put it up, and a bunch of people, what do you think happened? How do you think the political convoy swamp reacted to that? It's really interesting how they behave. It's almost like they behave exactly like the political parties do, right? Who are obsessed with legacy media. They still think legacy media is legitimate and they're always playing to that audience. And the first thing, they do this strategy called the drive-by smear. You see this a lot on Twitter. And so much of this is not organic. So much of it is just artificially boosted by companies. So what they do is they'll come in, they'll comment on either the article or a thread with the article or whatever it is, and they'll just start regurgitating smears or false accusations that are verifiably false, and I have disproven many times in other threads. They'll just resurrect the same smear, hoping many of you had not seen the numerous rebuttals in the past. And the first person to do that, to use the drive-by smear tactic on Twitter, was Big Fed, otherwise known as Chris Barber, or whoever is manning his account, which my guess is Keith Wilson or the two of them together, much like he does for Hurt Locker Tom's account. But it was interesting. They I don't know why they felt the need to even comment on this, but okay, fine. And that led to, I think, Danny, Hungry Trucker on Twitter, follow Hungry Trucker, who has been doing a deep dive just like Diverge Media, although Danny's a lot more guerrilla tactics, whereas Diverge Media is sort of the journalistic frame of everything that went on in the co-opt of the Freedom Convoy. And, you know, so the Big Fed guy, it's really weird behavior. It's just name calling. It's just like the left. You're right. They call you racist, bigot, blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing. They do they don't use those words. They give you other pejoratives, right? And so, you know, I had many of those people blocked or muted for some time. And this particular one, I think this is a new account because he got kicked off of Twitter. So I just responded to the drive-by smear, and this is a good tactic when you get the drive-by smear, at least for me, is I just responded with 3 questions that I've been asking for 2 years and have yet to get an answer. And those 3 questions were, so this is in response to a fabricated attack that is verifiably false by court documents and court affidavits. So I responded with, how are you related to Premier Brad Wall? What were you and Premier Brad Wall talking about behind our backs in your 30 phone calls during the Freedom Convoy? And how did he, Big Fed, know to move his truck out of harm's way on February 6th, about a week before the police moved in? So these are 3 questions that I've been asking, Bridget and a few others have been asking now for 2 years. 2 years. And you'd think in 2 years there would be a response, right? But we've talked about this before. We've talked about cognitive dissonance. We've talked about messaging on the stream many, many times before in human behavior, which is what I was trying to, navigate with the messaging around the Freedom Convoy, which is why they have no idea how it went viral and global. So how do you think he responded? Do you think he responded by answering the questions? Do you think he responded by just ignoring it and just exiting the thread and not continuing and digging his grave deeper? No, of course not. Of course not. He responded with one of the 7 signs of cognitive dissonance, right? So when you have somebody trapped cognitively, people don't like to admit when they're wrong, right? They don't like to apologize, especially when they've been primed and been priming people to target others. So the 7 signs, just for review, if you're new here, the 7 signs of cognitive dissonance, and get to know this when you deal with this with a lot of lefties too. The 7 signs of cognitive dissonance are, and this is Scott Adams, he's the one who really, he took this theory and kind of narrowed it down into a short list, which is super concise, and this explains everything. So these 7 signs of cognitive dissonance are, when in this case, I asked him the 3 questions that he can't answer for 2 years. The 7 signs are changing the topic, ad hominem, mind reading, word salad. That's what Trudeau and Creep Wilson do. Analogy instead of a reason. It's too complicated to explain. Or as we saw with Jordan Peterson and Kathy Newman, the "so you're saying" straw man. So which one do you think he did? Bridget, which sign of cognitive dissonance do you think Big Fed responded to when I asked him to finally answer the questions we've been asking for 2 years now? Well, he responded with, of course, an ad hominem attack or cartoon characters. Like, I thought a kid was running it, to be totally honest. It looked like a 5-year-old was running the account. But he just, responded by changing the topic or ad hominem attacks. That's it. And you can check out those threads on Twitter. They're still there. Just type in Hungry Trucker and look at some of the interactions he's had throughout the week. And, and Danny, poor guy. Oh, my God. The poor guy's place burned down this week. There was a fire at the apartment on top of his, which led to a fire in the building, and he just lost everything. It is not so much from the fire, but from all the water damage from the hoses, from the firefighters putting out the building. And how do you think Big Fed, Chris Barber, remember, Trucking Convoy is about peace, love, unity, and freedom, right? How do you think the political swamp, the Chris Barber, Big Fed arm of the political swamp, responded to Danny losing his apartment? He responded by saying he probably lit it himself, he deserves it, and a bunch of other personal attacks. So there you go. Peace, love, unity, and freedom. It didn't come from there. But anyways, my working theory, like the behavior you see from some of these people online, it's really, it's obviously disturbing. But what is going on there? Is there something deeper going on? And I think there is. My working theory is that the combination, and you might see this with other people online who become these, I don't know, activists, or jump on to, they jump onto different causes or groups that people form. They subvert it, they take over, and then they turn it into a money laundering operation for themselves or for the political parties. Well, my working theory is on the individual level that the combination of political tribalism and social media causes mental illness. Think about that. It's the tribalism of politics, which everybody's being primed to try to buy into, which is why I don't. And the proliferation of social media and telecommunications that's instant and around the world, those two things together, and the type of messaging that's used on social media, is resulting in mental illness. It's not just TikTok. TikTok's bad for one particular reason, But I think it just in general, there's a broad stroke, and you can see it in some of these people, right? And that's what you're watching in the political convoy swamp. You're watching a lot of people who are suffering mental illness. And I'll give you an example. I remember I was in the Sheraton Hotel, the beginning of the convoy, and this is after I tore Creep Wilson a new a-hole for selling us. I should have realized he was there specifically to sell us out with that War of the Worlds video, which completely changed the in the law enforcement's eyes. It was the opposite mood and behavior that we had established. So that was clearly an attempt to come in and subvert it. But anyways, I'm in the. I thought we were trying to work together a little bit because everybody wanted them as legal counsel, and I'm like, oh my god, we need real lawyers, not these clowns. But whatever, I can't deal with everything. And there's a little like table area. It's like a bar table. It's like a raised table. And I'm talking with Wilson and Eva. And I remember sitting there thinking, Wilson is trying to convince me, tell everybody to ditch the JCCF and go directly to him, and Eva will quit, and the two of them will work together representing us and just pay him. And it's like, pay him for what? It's trucker. It's like, I don't have access to the money, right? I made it very clear. I want nothing to do with money. The only thing I got even remotely close to was Bitcoin, but the Bitcoiners raised the money and distributed it, right? But I remember the two of them sitting there and thinking, what is wrong with these people? So he's trying to undermine his own client, because technically his retainer is with the JCCF. So he's trying to stab them in the back. And this other Eva bimbo is doing the lipstick thing, trying to explain to me that she's legally blonde and she loves to cross-examine. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what is this clown world? Like, get these people away from me. I gotta go back and do some actual stuff. It was so funny. And it's like those videos you see, this guy, Adam Rose, he does those videos from the construction site. He's got the construction hat on Instagram, and you see like a bulldozer falling over. And it was exactly that in the Sheraton Hotel. It was so funny. And I remember thinking, are these people mentally ill? They gotta be. They gotta be mentally ill. What's going on with them? Anyways, so there you go. I think political convoy exhibits signs of mental illness. And I think that's also why Creep Wilson lied on the stand to everybody during the POEC. I think, we always try to ascribe things to malicious behavior, to describe as malicious behavior, Hanlon's razor. Maybe there's another thing, Hanlon's razors never ascribe malice to those things that can be explained by stupidity, something to that effect. But I think there's a third thing, which is mental illness. And I think that might have been what was driving that behavior on the stand. How a lawyer becomes a witness in his own case. It's just, what the fuck? Such a setup job is great. But anyways, check out the Twitter threads around this stuff. It's really interesting. If you click on Bridget or Hungry Trucker, Fringe Connection, Alberta Kennedy, there's a whole bunch of people that have had enough and they're starting to push back. And by the way, I want to thank everybody who's been messaging me over the past couple of weeks while I've been slaving it away in the truck, like literally as much as I can, for all the apologies. I really do appreciate all the people who've, and you know who you are, I'm not going to name people, but the people who sent me DMs privately and said, I can't believe what I believed. Clearly, they sold you out, and clearly you were doing your best to keep everybody together. And I believed, their fabricated lies. And I said, it's okay. It's not their fault. There's a whole mechanism that's trying to propagandize their own voters, on all sides of the political spectrum. And God forbid somebody speaks not from a politically tribal frame that tries to show that, no, there's good and bad everywhere. they don't like that, and that's how you get attacked. So I really do appreciate all the apologies. That was very, very, very kind of you. I really do appreciate it. And I'm just, I wonder what's going to happen and when we'll hit critical mass where enough people understand they've been lied to for the past couple of years and what that's going to look like, right? People don't like being lied to, right? Especially about something that they were so passionately involved in. I saw that. We all saw that moment, how it brought everybody together. It gave us hope. It was a sign that crazy town is coming to an end. And it was a great unifying moment. I wonder what it's going to look like when it hits critical mass of people who've been lied to for the past couple of years about me and other people. Not just me, other people, Bridget and some other people as well. What's it going to look like when all those people realize that they were manipulated and exploited for their money for a political party or a political project? And when I say political party, I mean the Uniparty, right? But anyways, all right. Next, we got something that is in the National Telegraph, which is part of the reason I wanted to stream here, not just to test it, which, is it still working? I think it is. I found the leadership of the convoy in my... Oh, yeah, this was the biggest lie. Bridget says, the quote, I found, when he was asked, who did you decide who was the leader of the convoy? He said, I found the leadership of the convoy in my brain. That's a lie because he doesn't have one. So, anyways, he's got enough of a brain for mental illness. That's about it. And by the way, why was he on stage with Jason Kenney 2 months after the convoy? The people who, sold that, I don't know, the whole Quds border thing, but that was, Jason Kenney was in charge at that point, right? And he was also the premier and well connected in the Conservatives. Why was the lawyer for the people who are supposed to be politically opposed to you on stage with a couple of months after? That doesn't happen in politics unless they're all working together. But anyways, who cares? Mental illness. So much of this is going on in our world. Yes. Yep. Social media may be one of the causes. And I think the effect of social media is only temporary. Stephen Hicks was explaining this from his perspective on, it was in the middle of when we first started. It was on Glenn Beck. And he said, he brings up the point, I think he might be right, that this is a very new era. We've only had social media type public communications or public instant communications around the world for 10 years or so. It's going to take us some time to get adapt to it and to understand that half of what we're seeing on there are complete lies. Like this, all the conspiracies, like the one that makes me crazy is the calling contrails chemtrails. It makes me nuts. Like, oh my God. Oh, you have minus 50-degree air comes in contact with an 800-degree combustion chamber and it gets ignited. Guess what happens? Water vapor, aka clouds. But I think that might be an op, but that's another thing. All right. So in the National Telegraph, there's an article written by John Goddard about it's a little bit of a follow-up to the ChickenLand shooting. So just get you up to speed and explain a little bit of that. This was a couple of years ago. 24-year-old Naeem Akil was gunned down by 3 men who walked into his family-owned takeout restaurant called ChickenLand. The reason he was gunned down is very interesting. It's something that our diversity group wouldn't want to talk about. And I think most of the family were shot as well, but Naeem was the one who was killed, unfortunately. The victim and his family. This is a question for all the wokesters, the woke cult, the diversities, the diversity obsessed racists. The victim and his family are Druze. My question to you: what are Druze? You don't know, do you? You have no idea. Anyways, So these three people, their names are Anad Nath, Naksa Abasi, and Suleiman Raza. True Canadians. I think their family their families fought in World War II. I'm pretty sure about that, right? Anyways, they were the assailants with the one was a driver, and I think there were two gunmen, if I'm not one or two gunmen. There's another story about it that gives you all the details. Joe Warmington covered it in the Toronto Sun a little bit. The rest of the media and the political class of all parties have tried to ignore it, and we're not going to allow them to, right? So anyways, this right now, it's in the court system. And this is the key. This is the point of the article. The judge was supposed to rule on this case at the end of November. Okay? End of November 2023. It is now April 2024, and the judge has yet to rule on it. We're now, what, 4 months? 4 months, the December, January, February, March. Yeah, 4 months that the judge has yet to rule on this. Why? 4 months. Why 4 months for a ruling? So I reached out to Joseph Newberger, who is the host of Not on Record, one of the podcasts I produce. If you don't watch Not on Record, you should, because he explains in detail in many of their episodes how our court system works. And maybe Creep Wilson and Eva Chipiak should start watching him as well, because they could use a few lessons. But anyways, and those fuckers at the JCCF. So anyways, I asked Joseph about it, and his response was, I'll quote him, "Not good. This the ruling on such an issue should be within 30 to 60 days, and does not seem that they're going to trial anytime soon. This could be a stay under 11B, but would be a massive story." And I thought to myself, and so I'm going to read that again, just so you heard that, okay? Not good. The ruling on such an issue should be within 30 to 60 days, and does not seem that they're going to trial anytime soon. This could be a stay under 11B, but would be a massive story. So what does that mean? And this is kind of what my working theory might be. Is this the latest tactic from the woke cult? That when they get a diversity case like this, like, I don't know, Boys in the Hood, ISIS style, walks in and shoots up a family restaurant owned by a bunch of Druze, that they're just not going to rule on it. And they're going to wait until statute of limitations, and or that the case they file for a motion to stay it. Stayed, from what I understand, again, I'm not a lawyer, from what I understand means it hasn't been ruled on either way. The courts were unable to continue with the process, and that's it. It's called a stay. So is that what we're going to do? Is that what the woke cult's going to do now? Because in the U.S., you see all these district attorneys that are letting everybody free. They don't want to prosecute any crime, and that gets funded by foreign money. Okay, well, what is this, the Canadian version, that they're just going to have judges who stay everything? Like, I don't know. Like, it's a shooting. This is like the kid's dead sort of thing. This might be important. It's not some BS political, some political case or a civil lawsuit. The kid's dead, you know? I don't know. I don't know. I'm just curious. Do you think that might be the new tactic to try to wait out the clock on these horrendous murder trials? Anyways. And the other thing is, you know, it's funny. You see the woke cult obsession with diversity. I call it race and racism, because they're just Ku Klux KKK racists with an outgroup preference is all they are. But who do they think commit all the crimes in the third world? They think white people are committing all the crimes? They think some Anglo people from England are going to South America, doing drive-by shootings, and then getting on a plane and leaving? Is that what they think? Like, and by the way, I've lived some very dangerous places in the third world and traveled to them. People there can be quite vicious. You go into the wrong neighborhood as a gringo, you're not coming back, which is what they're trying to, seems to be what they're trying to import here, I guess. I don't know. Okay. This other thing that's interesting, judges don't want to work anymore. I think it might be something more than that, Bridget. I think it might be politically motivated. But who knows? Listen, maybe there's a completely practical reason for that. If there is, then I take it all back, right? Maybe there is something around the case that makes it difficult for the judge to rule on it. But 4 months? Come on, 4 months. Anyways, photographer Jason Kenney followed Big Fed. The only time you saw, oh, that's funny. So Jason Kenney's photographer traveled with the political convoy Swamp. Isn't that interesting? All right. That's according to Bridget. Oh, thank you, Bridget. All right. We have an eclipse. Speaking of clown world. Oh my God. All right. So this week I was in the truck all week. And oh, sorry, that was Jess. I don't mean to give credit where credit is not due, but I love you both anyways, and everybody else here. So I was all over the U.S. this week. I spent most of the week in the truck trying to catch up on a whole bunch of things from all that time that I was traveling and doing media and stuff like that. Because unlike the political convoy Swamp, who was just in England, I guess because they didn't like that I have contacts there, and they got to put out the fire there. Unlike them, those grifters who are going to use your donation money so they could pool it together and do these campaigns of people traveling all over. I paid for my travel out of my own pocket. I paid. No one paid. No one else did. Everything was my money. I paid for it. So as a result, I'm trying to condense that time and layer it on top of my regular, somewhat part-time, not part-time, a little more than part-time schedule, and get caught up with stuff. So I'm driving through, I was all over Massachusetts and York and down in New Jersey and Philly and Maryland and stuff like that. And I see these signs. Bridget must have seen this if you've been on the road. They have these digital signs that, you know, often they do weather alerts, like on I-90, they'll do weather alerts when there's lake effect snow and whatever. And what do the signs say now? It's crazy. The signs say 4/8, so April 8th, solar eclipse, significant delays expected. What? It's an eclipse. The hell does that have to do with traffic? And if people's cars and trucks don't have headlights on them, it's an eclipse. What do you? And then I start seeing all this stuff. Maybe you have seen it. I don't know. Tell me if you've seen stuff online about the fear porn, about how the solar eclipse may cause damage to the electrical infrastructure, and the solar eclipse might do, I don't know, whatever it is, the cash systems and blah, blah. I watched Brokenomics with, Brokenomics is a Lotus Eater program that I was on, and I'm friends with the guys there. And Dan was hosting, Dan Tubb, who is absolutely brilliant, by the way. Follow him. King Bongo is his Twitter account. He interviewed Ed Dutton, and Ed Dutton is, I believe, he's a neuroscientist. Brilliant guy. He's got a YouTube channel as well. I can't remember the name of it. I'll see if I can find it to share it on Twitter. And he argues, based on his data and research in his field, that we have always had an IQ increase throughout civilization up until 1997. Yeah. And as of 1997, our collective IQ points are degrading at a rate of 1 IQ point per decade. Now, I don't know if you've seen the movie Idiocracy. I think you need to. I had somebody show it to me this year or last year. Our collective IQ points are going down 1 point every decade. Was this why I'm seeing all these signs on the road and, you know, everybody else saying warning of an eclipse. Are we that dumb? Like, really, are we that stupid now at this point? So you got the people who buy into, who don't understand that chemtrails are actually contrails, condensation trails. You have people now who think the solar eclipse, the alignment of the planets, which by the way happens every night. You see a partial eclipse every month. I mean, you don't call it because it's not during the day. But what do you think you see when you see a full moon and a half moon? That's the planet alignment. That's the moon, sun, and earth alignment. That's all that is. So we're like, it's not a CME, a corona mass ejection, which could have electromagnetic effects, depending on how big it is and when it hits and all that sort of stuff. Like, CMEs happen because they're solar flares that cause it. This is not that. This is just an eclipse. Just an eclipse. And I feel like it's like all these Fed accounts, like Alex Jones and all these other people that are clearly in cahoots with the political establishment to brainwash all of you and get you to believing into nonsense. But what is going on? Like, I remember hearing this with Wi-Fi radiation, that, oh, there's so much Wi-Fi. Like, what's the, they don't, do people not understand the difference between ionizing radiation and non-ionizing radiation? Like, I don't, this is grade 4 science, maybe grade 5. That's it. It's pretty basic stuff. It's really scary. It's really, I don't know. Is this a sign of the IQ point going down by 1 point collectively per decade? Or is this more foreign money utilizing these platforms online to brainwash people, to cause more division in Western countries? Or maybe it's both, right? Maybe the cause and effect order is in the reverse order. I don't know. Bridget, shut down the internet and hand out encyclopedias for a few years. Well, that's not gonna solve it. I mean, who knows, the encyclopedia data is accurate. And that's something else, you know. Scott's talked a lot about this, about history. And this is kind of a more liberal perspective, but I guess they're kind of right. And it's actually not liberal. It's a more academic perspective is a better way to describe it. How do you know history is true? Like, what's going to happen when 20, 30 years people read the history of the Freedom Convoy and they see the official paper, that piece of toilet paper by Rouleau, who he should be ashamed of, destroyed any legacy that he had and made him look like an asshat and a clown? What are people going to think when they read that in the future? That's why I did this, because I knew they would do this. I knew they would try to distort all of this and destroy this amazing moment in Canadian history and tarnish it for the history books. But how do you know your history is real, right? How much of our history that we've learned about is fake news? Because you see them doing it right now. You see them doing that around the Freedom Convoy, right? Everything that the lie that I started with here, that some of you were so kind enough to apologize that they bought into the lie, that's the official story they're trying to promulgate. And it's completely fake and artificial. How much of history has been tarnished that way? I don't know. I have no idea. But anyways, my point is just an eclipse. It's just like, it's so crazy. It's so crazy. I wish we can get back to a point where we understood, like, and I've heard so much of this stuff in Twitter Spaces, and half the time, well, not half the time, some of the time it's people that are just dumb, and sometimes it's people that are clearly, like, there's people who are aligned with entities that don't have the Western world's interest at heart and are trying to cause chaos here. Whether it's the moon landing conspiracy theory, the 9/11 conspiracy theory, all this other bullshit, it's completely provable. But people are buying into this nonsense because they're using social proof to do it, to make you all dumber. I don't know. Well, all of us, right? No, don't just you trying to do it to me too. But anyways, all right, just an eclipse. How about a little bit of a white pill? How about some good news? Good news from technology. History is always an interpretation of the author and who has the power. That's exactly true. And you can see that with ancient history, right? If you look at, interpretations from, I don't know, whether it's Assyrian or all of Mesopotamian history, Akkadian, Sumerian, all that sort of stuff. Who wrote the history? Well, the people who could afford the clay bricks to write the history, they wrote the history. So who knows? I mean, everything should be, doesn't mean you completely dismiss it, but you just have to have different models of the world. Like I always try to have different models of the world so I can view the world through different frames. So I don't like when people say, label themselves, oh, I'm a conservative, or I'm a whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, you need to understand the different models of the world to interpret it in different ways, because not one philosophy is always correct, right? So anyways, Apple Vision Pro. I know everybody's freaks out about the glasses and stuff like that, but I think it's solving a problem. And I heard this on a podcast a couple of days ago. I think it was Scott as well, but he was talking more younger people. I'm talking about a different demographic, which is the Apple Vision Pro apparently has a new feature where you put on the glasses, you put on the VR glasses, right? And you're in this virtual world. So you can see your apartment, but you have, avatars and digital screens that can come up. So it's really the next phase of augmented reality in a VR structure. Looks really cool. I've never tried it. I keep wanting to go in Apple store when I'm in the States. Maybe I'll make sure to do that on Monday. But very, very cool stuff, right? And so now it has a feature, which you've seen everybody's been playing with, that essentially everybody gets scanned as an avatar and a digital version that looks exactly like you. Facebook tried this, but they're clan world. But there's a digital version of you that can be interpreted as you speak. It would behave as you speak. And I know we all get worried about this with AI, that people are going to do, these deep fake videos and stuff like that. So that's the negative side. But I think there's a positive side too, and that's this, which is this, like, what you can do in this environment is you can put on the goggles and we can both be in an Apple Vision Pro, and I appear in your environment as though I'm right beside you. I think initially it's just kind of your torso up, which eventually that will morph into a full representation of you there. What do you think this does, or potentially could do, to help elderly people with loneliness? Think about that. If you have elderly people who are suffering loneliness, but they have these goggles and they can instantly interact with their family who are anywhere in the world, and a digital representation of them could be right beside them, and they're talking, like, it's not a fake version. They're talking. The digital construct is there. But, like I saw even with my own family, when my grandparents were getting older, everybody was busy, everybody was at work and stuff. Like, yeah, people would love to see each other, but just life is pulling you in all sorts of directions. And you're across the city. It's an hour away. If I go now, it's going to be an hour. I'll only have 20 minutes before we got to go back. And, like, it just becomes difficult. What if this technology helps end the loneliness epidemic with elderly people? And we all know, I think we all know, one of the things that causes, I think, I don't know causes, but definitely affects people's mental health as they age, and their health in general, I think, is that they get lonely. And that, I think, that's a big part of why, people's bodies start to decay. Sometimes their minds start to decay because they're just lonely. Well, what if this solves this? What if this allows us, you're somebody who's elderly, maybe you're in an assisted living facility or whatever, but you can put on the goggles at any time, or you can have daily meetings with your family, and you can have a virtual meeting where they're all together and you're talking to them. It's not a fake version. You're talking, they're talking at their home, and you're all kind of together. I don't know. I think that's a positive. So all of the tech that many people are afraid of, the deep fake, the AIs, and all that sort of stuff, there's always two sides to the trade, right? There's a debit and a credit. There's a buy and a sell. There's a positive and a negative. And I think with this stuff, there is a positive as well. And I think that's something to be hopeful for, because as technology advances, not just with Apple, but other competing companies that start to accelerate. So it's the opposite of what you were saying before, get rid of the internet. I think that's the thing that will save us as people age, because the internet is just a protocol. It's just a tool. It's a means to get bytes from one place to another anywhere in the world. It's about what you do with those bytes. And if you use those bytes for the purpose of bringing people together so they don't feel as lonely, I think that's a net positive on the world. So I don't know. But it's not a machine, Jesse. Jesse says loneliness loneliness can't be healed by a machine, but it's not a machine. It's it's your place that you see, and your family who you're talking to is right there beside. And if you don't think that you will not be convinced that it feels exactly the same way, then you have never tried it. It's really wild how all sorts of VR platforms can be, how it can play with your psychology. And my point is, it can play with your psychology to the positive, right? I'm telling you, people will love it. We often don't think so, right? We start with why something is never going to work, and then we end up testing it and using it, and then we love it, right? Jesse is saying people have proven that touch and being with people, blah, blah, blah. Yes, for sure. There's an acceleration with kinesthetics, but is it better to have nothing? Right? So yeah, just because you can't have the full kinesthetic experience doesn't negate the idea that having an increased amount of experiences and time with your family, even if it's through the digital representation and them speaking on the other side, it doesn't negate that is a step forward, because the alternative right now is to have nothing and limited communication, right? Anyways, okay. Jim Rippleton doesn't give hugs physically. Yeah, of course, I know, but you're comparing it in the wrong direction. You're comparing it to the ideal scenario. You need to compare it to the worst scenario, which is when you have nobody. So it doesn't mean you won't still have in-person experiences and get together, but it means all those days in between where you can't have that, now you have the next best thing, which is as close as you can get to being touch without being that. And then on the days that you get together, you'll have that too, right? So, anyways. Okay. I love you all. I hope that helps give you a little bit of positivity. And don't forget, the political swamp are all scumbags, and they all lied to you for the past 2 years. And it's starting to catch up with them. And I thank you again, everybody who apologized. I really appreciate it more than you realize. And I know Bridget does too. I know everybody else does, as well as Chad and Chris and all that sort of stuff. Everybody who was sold out by the politicians who sold out the trucker convoy, all of us who were sold out by them, really appreciate all the nice comments and the love and support and speaking up on our behalf. That's the big thing. And I know a lot of people don't want to because they're afraid that the mob is going to attack them. That's not going to happen, because you should see all the private messages I'm getting from people apologizing. And yeah, we were there. We supported you. We were with you. Can't believe this happened. I can't believe what I believed and whatever. It's all awesome. And really, really appreciate that. And that's how we'll get back to that vibe and that feeling. You know, that vibe and that feeling you had from Convoy, from the Freedom Convoy, when you saw all those videos online, when we were talking to each other as much as we could, and everybody was unifying, and you notice that just that feeling is gone, because that's what politicians do. The politicians came in and killed that feeling and that emotion as much as possible by co-opting Facebook group by Facebook group by Facebook group by Facebook group, right? I think they just took over the Freedom Convoy Facebook group and turned it into some political project for the Conservative Party. That's why you're missing that feeling, because those of us who came together, many of us who are in this stream right now, and use well, me too, BJP, Bridge is a good example. We were the ones who were putting together that feeling of us coming together and unifying whatever. And when they sold us out and stepped in front of the camera and worked with all their fake official alternative media news agencies to make you to pretend that the official story is this, not the people that brought us together, that's why you feel a little bit of a void right now. That's why. But that feeling is still there, and that experience and that emotion is still there. It's just going to take time. That's part of the reason I talk about this sometimes, right? When I can. Because that feeling was as impactful to me as it was to you. And we'll get there. We'll get there. Things are going to get better, I promise. Even if you don't like the Apple Vision Pro. All right. I love you all, and you are the best. I will talk to you all soon. I got to get ready for my interview, so I got to do some stuff now. Have a good day, and be nice to people. Be kind to people. Be kind to strangers, because you never know which stranger you're kind to ends up being a new friend. Bye-bye.